Welcome to Partnerships for Profit, the podcast where we bring you inside the world of joint ventures, strategic partnerships, and powerful collaborations. Each episode, you'll dive into conversations with top entrepreneurs, visionaries, and business leaders, unlocking the secrets to building profitable relationships that drive growth and success. Whether you're looking to expand your network, find new referral partners, or scale your business, you're in the right place. Let's get started.
Welcome to Partnerships for Profit. Today we are joined by Sara Stern, who is an expert EOS implementer and a family business owner guide. Is that correct?
Yes. I get to do both. Family businesses are my passion.
Sara, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here. Can we begin things off? Could you educate me a little bit about EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System?
Yes, absolutely. It was built by a guy named Gino Wickman for privately held companies that have between 10 and 250 employees in them. Not all of which are family businesses. Those are just the ones that I'm most excited to work with. And of course, it's made for companies that want to grow, who are entrepreneurial. If you think you've got it and you don't need to grow, if you think you've all got it, figured out, you don't need EOS. But most companies don't have it quite all figured out, and EOS is really helpful.
Right. So who are the people that you help with your services, and what are some of the main sort of pain points and problems that they're experiencing? What do you see coming across your door? What do they bring to you?
Yeah. Oh, and I should say EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, sounds like it's software. It's not software. It's a way of thinking about your business. It's a way of running your business. It's a set of tools. I think it's amazing. There's only 20 tools in the toolbox that owners are usually the original decision makers, but owners and their leadership teams get to use day in and day out to run their company. It helps them really get clear about where they're going, how they're going to get there, and then it helps them be a healthy team. So they're not wasting time on having meetings before the meeting and meetings after the meeting and all that kind of stuff. So like I said, it's not only made for family businesses, but most of my clients have at least 2 generations trying to work in the business together.
Oh, wow. Now, it sounds like you have a real passion for helping family businesses, and that is, you grew up in a family business. Is that correct? And
Yeah.
explain that a little bit. Could you talk to that point?
Sure. My dad and my uncle fixed cars. They had a gas station and auto repair shop. My mom and my aunt took turns. They were either at the shop or they were at home taking care of the kids being me and my 2 sisters and my cousins. There, according to what I saw, was not a huge amount of conflict. They managed to run that business quite smoothly. I'm sure there was significantly more conflict than what I saw. They just did a good job of keeping the kids separate from that. But what I realized, my parents didn't instill in me that I had to be a next generation person in that business. They did, though, instill in me the idea that I needed to grow up and make a positive difference in the world. And as I grew up and didn't join the business, what I realized was the number one way to make a big difference in the world is to help privately held companies run well. And specifically family businesses. There are more family businesses in the world than any other kind of business. In the US, 2/3 of every business, of all businesses, are family held. Yep, I know.
Wow,
mind-boggling.
right.
And other countries, that number is 80 or 90%.
Right. So you talk about, how this helping people, right? That it's so important for you to help people. Do you think you could maybe share a story? Is there a particular story that stands out in your mind of a business or a family that you were able to help and really see a transformation in their business or in their practice as a result of your help and guidance?
Do you have 8 or 9 hours here for me to go on and on? Oh my gosh. I've seen so many incredible things happen in front of my eyes. One of the most powerful things I ever saw is one of the first things I do with my clients is I help them figure out what are the jobs that are needed in the business first. We don't say, oh, there's 3 kids, now let's make up a job for their particular skills. We say, what roles does the business need? And then who's uniquely skilled to do it? And I had the privilege of working with a founder and his wife and 2 of their kids in the next generation. And we were talking about who should run sales. And one of the kids raised her hand and said, I think I'd be really good at this. And the dad was kind of pushing back, I don't know. And I could see she was getting more and more upset and he was getting frustrated. And then I said, is this the owner or, who's talking in the room right now? Is this the owner, the person who has run the sales team, or is this dad who's pushing back?
Right.
He said, oh gosh, it's dad. The dad in me is worried that my daughter won't have time for her kids and for her life and for how involved she wants to be. And that was so huge because without separating that business from family, that conversation was about to be a whole bunch of hurt feelings and confusion and conflict. And after that, we were able to get really clear. Dad was worried about his daughter, but the business owner couldn't think of anybody who'd rather run sales in the company that he founded.
Right.
Really powerful moment.
Right. And making those kind of breakthroughs has to be pretty rewarding. Now, but is there an aspect of your role that is the most rewarding, or are there multiple things that are the most rewarding? What are the most rewarding aspects for you personally? I mean, because it sounds like you really develop relationships with these people that you help.
Yeah. So what came to mind when you asked me that question, and now guaranteed I'm going to think about that for the rest of the day and keep thinking, that's the most rewarding. No, that's the most, no, that was the most rewarding. But the first thing that came to mind was this. In my work, I get to teach my clients a handful of really simple tools. They learn those tools and then they don't need me anymore.
Right.
And I love that about my work. So, the fact that I get to teach them the tools and then they graduate is amazing, but it also pulls on my heartstrings because, like you said, I have the honor of seeing transformations happen.
Right.
Sometimes there are fights, sometimes there is crying. I'm there for these really intense moments for people, and then I have to let them go. So it's a little bit heartbreaking, but it's amazing.
Right. Almost the empty nest syndrome, right?
Yes.
So I have to ask, just in terms of now you say family businesses. Now that's a pretty wide blanket. Is there a specific industry that most of these family businesses are in, or is it really just all a wide net?
Yeah. Well, it's not specific to industry. I will say this, of course, obviously family businesses are in all industries, but amazingly, there are 8 definitions of family businesses.
Oh,
and
wow.
Yeah, and I can say there's one type of family business that I'm most excited about, and that is 2 different generations working in the business at the same time. So other definitions would be maybe a husband and wife, brother, sister. It might be a situation where one generation has already sold their ownership and the next generation is there. Lots, again, 8 different definitions. But the place that I think is incredibly powerful is 2 generations working actively in the business together.
Right.
There's so much incredible learning that happens for both generations. And it's very intense. It's just incredibly intense for everyone.
Now, you're talking about the different relationships that people can have in these family businesses to each other. Is there a familial relationship that you see or that you feel is maybe more problematic or is more beneficial? Like, do you see more problems, say, in a brother and sister relationship of ownership or in a husband and wife? Is there one that is A, more problematic, and is there one that is B, more beneficial?
You've got me thinking.
I know that's a bit of a loaded question.
Yeah.
I apologize.
Oh no, that's okay. This is such an interesting question. I would say I can't say that I can put my finger on one that tends to be more problematic, but I will say this. I alluded to it before, and I want to say it really specifically. Harvard, back in 1978, came up with a model for family business. And it's 3 circles. It's a Venn diagram, so they all overlap in the middle. One of the circles is family, one is business. Those are the 2 obvious ones. The really interesting thing that Harvard did was add the 3rd circle, which is ownership.
Mm.
And like thinking of the example of the dad and the daughter that I mentioned earlier, they had the family and the business that they were completely overlapped in that conversation. It was like, well, is dad pushing back, or is the owner pushing back? Is the leader pushing back? Who's pushing back? So I will say this, the relationships where people are aware of those three circles and are able to say, I'm speaking as a family member, or I'm speaking as a leader in the business, or I'm speaking as an owner, those relationships work the most smoothly. Of course they have conflict, but it's productive conflict, right? The ones where they kind of have the family and the business and ownership all on top of each other,
Right.
those are the most problematic. Those are the hardest. They're the hardest for me, and they're the hardest for them.
Right. So clearly defined roles for everybody is really a key component, it sounds like.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And could you share a little bit about the role that accountability plays in this? And furthermore, to that point, I also wanted to bring up, there's a type of ownership now that I think, we might not have seen, 20 years ago or whatever have you. But it is this ability now that you can have ownerships of ownerships where the family members are two completely separate locations, right? You can have all this work that's now done online, like we're speaking online right now. Can you speak a little bit about the role of accountability and maybe about how accountability affects a situation like that?
Yeah. Well, first of all, accountability is so huge. I've had conversations back and forth with people where they'll say, we're a family first business. We're
Right.
not
Right.
too hung up on profits. We're not too hung up on bureaucracy and stuff like that. And I say, good. I really do want you to think about your family and the families of everybody who works in the business. And I would say, if you don't focus on accountability, if you don't focus on running a profitable business, what you tend to have is dysfunction. You have people who come to work and they do whatever
Right.
the hell they want, when they want it, the way they want to do it. It tends to kill morale for everybody around that family member who's behaving that way. You lose your best talent, you lose your best people, your high performers go work somewhere else. So I am a huge fan of the idea of build jobs in the business that are needed for the business. They're not needed for the family. If you've got a person in the family and there's not a seat for them in the business, great. Go help them find a job at another company, give them money every
Right.
month, buy them a house, whatever you got to do, but take care of them in the family circle. Don't take care of them in the business circle. And the reason I say that is I say this kind of jokingly, but I also have noticed this to be true. There's this amazing correlation between a profitable company and having money, and a happy family. So if you want to have a happy family, run a great business that has great profitability. If you want to have a disgruntled, unhappy family, run the business in a silly way and lose profitability and hurt that asset.
Absolutely. And let me ask now, I'm assuming here that you have done work and done business guidance and coaching with businesses that are not family owned before. And I'm wondering, can you speak a little bit about what the difference is in how you would handle a situation where it's family owned versus a situation where a business is not family owned? Does it require different guidance, different coaching, different methods?
Here's the amazing secret. It's not that different.
Really?
It really isn't. The only thing I would say is I think I get a little more. Well, let me back up. There's guidelines with EOS. The idea that, if there's a conflict, you speak directly to the person. You have the, oh, sorry.
No, you're all right.
My dog is barking at this particular moment.
Hey, these
It's
things
okay.
happen. Once on the show,
Yeah, this is his moment to shine, and he's going to do it.
That's it.
Should we just wait till he's done? Can you edit that out, or should I just keep going?
We're live. You can just keep going. It's
Okay.
fine.
All right. Okay.
Yeah. It's not too bad.
Yeah.
It's not too bad. I know it sounds probably worse where you are, but the mic doesn't pick it up as
Okay,
strongly
thank
as you would expect. Yeah.
Well, the dog wanted to make a point. Oh, yeah, that's a good thing for the dog to make a point about. So here's what I'd say. There's guidelines. For example, you go talk to the person that you're talking to, for example, directly to them. Go talk to 6 other people and not talk to that person.
Right.
I would say with families, it's extra important to follow those kinds of rules of engagement or those guidelines when it comes to having a healthy relationship. A lot of people will say, oh, well, with family businesses, you kind of got to make exceptions. I'm like, no. Don't make any exceptions around that. You're the one, the external person, the mirror who's saying, don't mess up your family relationship by doing funny stuff over in the business.
Right. And I guess another question that I would have about that is, it's because it sounds like there is really almost a psychology element to what you do. And there's almost a psychological element. And I was wondering if you would care to speak to that at all, what role psychology plays in this.
Yeah. A lot of advisors who work with family businesses take a very, kind of a therapist or psychological approach. And they'll talk about a lot of things like, how oldest kids behave or middle kids, or, oh, there's, family issues and stuff like that from before. I don't so much.
Right.
What I find is focusing on a handful of tools and having a set of understandings about how people believe tends to have amazing psychological side effects.
Right.
But I don't get into it. It's not, I heard this incredible story. A family business, dad died very unexpectedly. He got sick and was dead within, it was less than 2 months.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, traumatic for everybody.
Absolutely.
His 7 adult children were sitting around the dining room table afterward talking about what do we do with the business. And one of the kids had been working there and he had been on the leadership team, and they were saying, well, we think you should run it. And another kid said no, and just kept saying, no, he can't run it. And finally they said, why can't he run it? And they said, because when I was 12, he stole my bike and he crashed it. And I don't think he should run the business.
Wow.
So
how long have you been sitting on that?
Right. They're adults at this point. They were adults. Many of the kids around this table had their own children. And this is what was showing up. So I know stuff like that is in the room when I'm working with a family business, but it's all about we're working on what's happening today and forward. And if there is stuff that has been held on to for 30 years or something like that, I'm a huge fan of people spending time with their own psychologist or therapist.
Absolutely.
And working through that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Now, we've spoken a little bit about what happens when people come to you and the transformations that you've seen in people when they come to you. But on the flip side of that, what happens if people don't come to you? What if these family business just keep on operating and doing the same old and thinking things will get better? What do you see when people should have come to you and didn't?
Yeah. Well, it's not always the saddest thing in the world, right? If they don't get help. And it's kind of wild. I feel like Hollywood gets family business all wrong. They make family businesses look like they're so dysfunctional and so incompetent and so enabled. And I find family businesses tend to be the opposite. Quite functional, quite hardworking, very competent, very humble. So anyway, I just always have to say that out loud.
Right.
Why Hollywood? Why? But so it's not always bad, right? Many family businesses figure this out on their own. Many do. Certainly sometimes without help, there can be giant emotional or financial explosions in a family business. And that is, from my seat, incredibly sad. And it happens a lot less often than I think people like to imagine, right? Like you can step back and look at family business and say, oh, explosion, fireworks. Yeah, sometimes explosion, fireworks. A lot of the time people work it out. And very sadly, sometimes businesses close and leave a family behind with massive amounts of debt and uncertainty or unwillingness to talk to each other.
Right. Well, and we've discussed, there's a bit of a difference with family businesses because there's a generational thing. And I guess this is more out of my own curiosity than anything else. But what is, of all of the businesses that you've worked with, these family-owned businesses, what is the longest running generational this business has been in the family for this amount of years that you've seen?
Yeah, it's incredible. So in the US, a 5th generation family business is this shocking thing, at least from my viewpoint. I've worked with 2 5th-generation family businesses. I've
Wow.
worked with 2 4th-generation family businesses. That's very unusual in the US. But you look over in Asia, or you were in different parts of Asia, you look in parts of Europe, 15, 16 generations. The Zildjian company right now is based in the US, but it was started in Turkey, I think. And I think their 17th generation is coming in to the business.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
that's drum equipment, right?
Yeah, cymbals.
Yeah, cymbals. Right,
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's
So,
incredible.
isn't that cool?
That's wild.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. You know what's also fascinating? There are family businesses in Japan that are, I mean, I don't even know, 17, 18 generations. But it's not uncommon in Japan for the family that owns the company to adopt a person, literally adopt a grown man who's running their family business.
Wow.
And that's how they perpetuate the business. They find a
Wow.
person who's good at running it, and then they adopt them.
That's wild.
I
No
think
way.
that isn't that
That's
cool?
wild. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
really interesting. Now,
Yeah.
just to jump back a little bit to EOS, right? Just because I feel there's a little bit more to be mined in that. So the name of the game here, what you're doing is you're helping these businesses run essentially more efficiently, right? That's kind of the name of the game here is efficiency and productivity. So I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about how EOS improves efficiency and what kind of insights you could provide us with as to how that is done.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's kind of fun to boil it down to efficiency. I guess that's true. And so it's not about efficiency of, let's make this funny that I happen to have a knife on my desk. What does that say about me? It's right around lunchtime. But anyway, right? It's not like, oh, we're just completely focused on making this knife in 30 seconds instead of 45. But it's about having meetings that are productive, where you talk about the most important things, where you're not distracted. It's about talking about the important things in the room with the right people, so taking a whole bunch of that, like politicking and business dysfunction and all the stuff that really people don't like about their jobs. It's doing everything we can to get that out of the business. It's about making sure everybody in the business is doing work they're uniquely skilled to do, because when you do that work, you're more productive. You're much more efficient. You solve problems more quickly. You're also happier. You're healthier.
Right.
Those are nice things. So it's, running great meetings, paying attention to the most important things, making sure you have the right people in the right spot, figuring out what is the most efficient way to run your business, and then doing it that way every single time. Yeah.
So, and I guess this is kind of interesting. So say, I'm a family business owner and I've come to you for your guidance, and it's day one and you walk through the door and we sit down. And I guess, can you give me an example of what would be some of the short-term goals that you establish, and what are some of the long-term goals that you establish?
Yeah.
Is that is it all the same, or does it vary case by case, or could you speak to that?
Yeah, so here's what I love that you said that. So it's so interesting, because my day one with clients, we're not really even looking at where are we going, long-term or short-term. The first thing we do is who needs to do what. And I cannot take credit for doing it this way. And it's brilliant. It was a stroke of genius when Gino Wickman set it up this way. The first thing we figure out is who's accountable for what thing, so that when we start talking about, what's in 10 years, what's in 3 years, what's in 1 year, people aren't just saying, oh, sure, that sounds good. The head of sales knows I have to get that 70 million if we write that down, that kind of thing. So, but I would say with family businesses, a couple of common things I will see either in 10 years and we split it up, 10 years, 3 years, 1 year, 90 days, and 1 week. A common thing I will see either in the 10-year or in the 3-year is something around the owning generation retiring. That's a common thing. So we pick, what's the timeline on that? Another common thing is figuring out, and we don't figure it out in the room necessarily, but when or how will the next generation be buying the business? And we don't go into a lot of that, because that's really an ownership question. But what is the horizon for that? What is that going to look like? So that people are clear, this is when one generation is done, pulling the strings or breaking the ties or whatnot, and when does the next generation get to do that?
Now, and I'm sure when you're trying to set those timelines, I'm sure that you have run into at some point somebody that did not want to hand over the reins. And could you speak a little bit about maybe how you deal with that situation and how common is that to run into? Because
Oh,
I know that some of the older generation, they want to hold on tight.
yes. The most common thing that I've seen, and I wish Hollywood would figure this out, is the most common thing is the current owning generation says, I'll be done in 5 years.
Right.
And they say that for 15 years.
Right. Because they've
So
never had a plan to enact it.
yep, they're always willing to let go of the reins 5 years from today. But it never becomes 4 or 3 or 2 or 1, right? So it's always 5 years out or 3 or whatever the timeline is. So, and that can be, I completely understand it, especially if someone is a second or third or fourth generation owner. And people in those shoes have often, in many situations, the business is older than they are.
Wow. Yeah.
You know, like literally every day of their life, this business has been a part of their life, and they don't have a lot of an identity outside of that. And so the
Right.
idea of not going to the office,
Right.
not picking up the phone, not knowing how many of the trucks have been cleaned by noon, right? Just not knowing that is like, there is no concept of life. So I have a huge amount of empathy for people in that situation. While at the same time, I'm pretty strict about you've got to find somewhere else to be so the next generation can learn before they can't call you for advice anymore.
Right. Absolutely. And that's, you never know how much time you got. So it's,
Yeah.
highly important. And conversely, how often do you run into a situation where maybe the next generation does not want to follow in these footsteps and it's kind of being thrust upon them? And how do you navigate a situation like that?
Yeah. It's really incredible. I feel like I'm a little bit on a mission to help next generation people articulate what they want.
Right.
Because many of them, they wouldn't even question the fact that the business has been thrust on them. They just assume it's my turn. I have to. It's an I
Right.
have to, not an I get to or I want to situation. So in my work around working with family business owners, I say there's about 30 questions you need to answer to pass the business from one generation to the next. And one of the first questions is, what do I want? Which is a
Right.
remarkably hard question to answer when you're in a family business. What do I
Right.
really want in this business? I have seen some amazing situations where a third generation owner realized they were very connected to the idea of what the business did for the community and continuing their grandfather's legacy
Mm.
and the role their grandmother had played. And what they wanted to do was be an owner of the business. They didn't
Right.
want to work in it. And that person really found a cool way to be an owner and own along with two siblings who were working in the business. None of them were leading it. And it's a beautiful story of three owners, two employees, and neither one of them being on the leadership team.
Oh,
Ah,
wow.
that's beautiful. It's
Yeah.
beautiful. Yeah.
Now, just in our short time speaking here, I can tell that you are extremely, extremely passionate about what you do. And I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit. You spoke a little bit about how that passion was ignited, but I just, I would love for you to speak a little bit about how that passion is kind of renewed or refilled daily when you're working with these family businesses. How do you keep that passion alive?
Mm, mm. I have a personal my personal why in life is to make the biggest positive difference I can now and for generations.
That's
And
fantastic.
yeah, it's a little crazy, but whatever. That's what juices me up. So, and I do that by first and foremost trying to be the best parent I can be. That's the most efficient way to do that. Um, and and then the second most efficient way is to help family businesses. And so everything I'm doing, including this conversation, is helping me accomplish that why in life.
Right.
The other thing is, I've seen with my own eyes how hard and excruciating it is when things are bad. And I know that some of the concepts I have to share make a big difference. And so it's just like, oh, how can I not be excited? I mean, I feel like I have the luckiest job on the planet.
That's great. That's awesome. I mean, that's an amazing thing to wake up and feel that way, isn't it?
It's amazing. It's really amazing.
That's awesome. Well, Sara, thank you so much. If anyone listening would like to reach out to you to obtain your services and get your guidance, where can the people find you?
SaraBstern.com. I think it's funny that my name is a sentence, Sara B. Stern. So no H, just SARAB Stern.
Well, thank you so much for stopping by. Thank you so much for coming on the show. This has been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me. It's been really fun.
Thank you, everyone, for listening. And thank you, Sara. You have a good one.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of Partnerships for Profit. We hope you've gained valuable insights on how to form profitable partnerships and take your business to the next level. Be sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. Got a partnership story to share or someone you'd like to see featured on the show? Reach out to us. Until next time, keep building those partnerships for profit.